400 Chinese-made air defense missile launches within weeks. The systems are said to counter low-flying aircraft and drones. Although China has denied the claims, I'm joined by a foreign analyst to discuss this story. Thank you so much for joining us on ANews.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you on your show.
If Iran does indeed receive these Chinese-made air defense systems, how significantly could they change the military balance, particularly for U.S. and Israeli aircraft operating over or near Iranian territory?
Yeah, a very good question, and thank you so much again. Israel is not currently part of this stage of the war against the Iranian regime. It's only the U.S., which currently is involved. And we've seen also yesterday and today how Saudi Arabia has also engaged with Iranian militias out of Iraq to defend its territory after attacks on Saudi Arabia. We've seen also other countries in the Gulf take a part in some operations retaliatory against Iran and against their proxies, but for now it's the U.S. And why these MANPADS, these shoulder carried missiles are important. They give Iran, they fill a major gap for Iran where they couldn't really operate in defending against low-flying U.S. and Israeli aircraft in the initial phases of the war, and that's really helicopters, low-flying planes as well as drones, and so this might not sound like a lot. We are talking about a $60-70 million roughly contract for 400 of these MANPADS, but they could alter the game calculations and the war calculations, I should say, for the U.S. We know how an American aircraft, an F-15, was downed a few months ago over Iran, and that was done also likely with one of these Chinese-made launchers and missiles, all in one. So this could potentially also signal a lack of caution on behalf of Xi Jinping, the president of China, or rather a different calculation that he is ready to take vis-a-vis the U.S. Although President Trump was welcomed in Beijing in May, and Xi Jinping is expected in Washington D.C. In September, 24th, I believe, of September was the likely target date for a visit there. But again, this might really prompt President Trump to react in ways that Xi Jinping and his team are not possibly or necessarily prepared to handle the respective reaction. And by that, I mean sanctions. Sanctions have been already levied against Chinese firms, as you've presented. Also in May, we've seen Chinese satellite imagery companies being targeted with sanctions by the U.S. State Department and affiliated agencies for providing targeting data against U.S. troops, U.S. bases in the Middle East region. And so all of this will be taken into the calculation by the U.S. administration. We've seen how, President Trump, earlier on your show, we've seen how he's lobbied for senators to add to the Russia sanctions legislation also Iran sanctions. And that would mean not only Iranian companies per se, but also and government agencies, but also those that facilitate the continuation of the regime and its malign actions. So including companies from China and beyond. And, this game really by the Chinese government of using not the parent company headquartered out of Beijing, but part of the holding, a company headquartered out of Hong Kong, as if Hong Kong was an independent entity, as in the past. That's really
time for one more
farcical.
or two more questions?
That's
All right, Mr.
yeah.
Schwartz. So China has denied supplying these weapons to parties involved in the conflict. If the deal indeed is confirmed, would it suggest that Beijing is moving from diplomatic support for Iran toward a more direct involvement?
I mean, again, their diplomacy has constantly denied, supplying any sort of support to the Iranian regime, any sort of military support, I should say, because they are Iran's lifeline. They buy 90% or so of Iran's crude oil and condensates. But militarily, they have constantly denied supporting Iran. That's contrary to what all the data is suggesting. All of these shipments are tracked via satellite and via other means, including intelligence and human intelligence components. Everyone, in the U.S. intelligence organizations know very well, and the president is briefed daily on the type of support that China is providing, and the Chinese know very well that the U.S. knows about all of these, but they want to build credible deniability. That's not working. They are currently a superpower, China, and it really depends on the U.S. actions to make President Xi Jinping recalculate whether this really is something that he is ready to continue doing to support the regime in Tehran, a regime which obviously is shaky also because of popular unrest in Iran, and China wants to continue being a partner to Iran, even if this regime falls as a result of popular pressure. So they need to be very careful as to the calculations going forward vis-a-vis the US, but also vis-a-vis Iran itself, the population that is.
Andrei Schwartz, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on ANews.
Thank you.
Oil prices have jumped after the latest U.S. military strikes in the Middle East. It comes as news